Mother Teresa, often referred to as the Saint of Calcutta, was a symbol of selfless devotion, compassion, and unwavering faith. To millions, she was more than just a humanitarian. She was the living embodiment of divine charity. Known for her tireless work with the poor and sick in the slums of Calcutta, she became a beacon of hope in the darkest corners of the world. Her humble beginnings and her rise to international recognition were a testament to her dedication to a higher calling, one that led her to found the Missionaries of Charity, an order devoted to the care of the destitute and the dying. Yet, despite her widespread acclaim, there was a facet of her life that was kept hidden from public view, a secret she carried with her until her final days. As the years passed, the world came to view her as an untouchable icon, a symbol of unwavering faith and divine grace. She was seen as a figure beyond reproach, admired by world leaders, and even canonized as a saint by the Catholic Church. But behind the veil of sainthood, there was a truth that few ever knew, a truth that would leave the world questioning everything they thought they knew about the woman they had long revered. Before anything else, write this decree in the comments. I manifest a miracle of abundance in my life. I am worthy, I accept and receive with gratitude all the blessings the universe has for me. If you want more hidden revelations like this, subscribe and turn on the bell. Don't miss anything. In the final years of her life, as her health began to deteriorate, Mother Teresa's inner world was in turmoil. Beneath her calm exterior, there was a deep and persistent struggle. For decades, she had been the face of mercy, known for her unwavering faith in God and her commitment to serving the poorest of the poor. Yet, as she approached the end of her earthly journey, a secret revelation emerged, one that cast doubt on everything she had ever stood for. In a series of personal letters discovered after her passing, Mother Teresa expressed profound feelings of spiritual desolation and doubt. These letters, written over a period of many years, revealed a side of her that the world had never seen, a side of deep internal conflict, confusion, and pain. In them, she spoke of a silence from God, an absence of the divine presence that had once been so central to her life. Despite dedicating herself fully to a life of service, she found herself grappling with a profound spiritual darkness that left her feeling abandoned and isolated. For someone who had spent decades ministering to the suffering and the dying, offering solace and hope to the most desperate of souls, this revelation was nothing short of shocking. What made these letters even more striking was the extent to which Mother Teresa questioned her own faith. In her letters, she openly expressed doubts about the very existence of God. She described feeling as though she were in a spiritual desert, a place where God's presence seemed completely absent, leaving her to struggle with the overwhelming silence that surrounded her. For a woman whose entire life had been dedicated to spreading the message of God's love, this was an incredibly painful revelation. The idea that Mother Teresa, the saintly figure who had inspired millions, could have felt such emptiness and despair challenges the very foundation of the image that had been built around her. It raises profound questions about the nature of faith, the human experience of spiritual doubt, and the complexity of religious devotion. In one particularly heart-wrenching letter, she described her experience of feeling as though she had been abandoned by God, a feeling so intense that it led her to question the very meaning of her life's work. "Where is my faith?" she wrote. "Even deep down, there is nothing but emptiness and darkness." These words, penned by the woman who had dedicated her life to serving the poorest of the poor, reflect a profound sense of spiritual abandonment that was as shocking as it was unsettling. The woman who had inspired so many with her unwavering faith and devotion to God seemed to be wrestling with a crisis of belief that no one had ever suspected. It was as though the light that had once guided her was now obscured by a thick fog of doubt, leaving her to walk a path of spiritual isolation. For many of her followers, these revelations were a bitter pill to swallow. The image of Mother Teresa as a saint, a woman who radiated divine love and compassion, was shattered by the discovery of her personal struggles with faith. Yet, it is important to note that these letters were not a sign of weakness or failure on her part. Rather, they reveal a deeply human side of Mother Teresa, one that speaks to the complexity of faith and the challenges that even the most devout individuals face in their spiritual journeys. Her doubts and struggles were not a denial of God, but an expression of the intense spiritual battle that can occur when one feels distant from the divine. These letters offer a glimpse into the inner life of a woman who, despite her external image as a living saint, was profoundly wrestling with the mysteries of faith, belief, and the silence of God. What these letters ultimately reveal is the tension between the public persona of Mother Teresa and her private experience of faith. On the outside, she appeared to be a paragon of virtue, a woman whose faith was unshakable and whose compassion knew no bounds. Yet behind closed doors, she was a woman who grappled with the same doubts and fears that many of us experience in our own lives. Her struggles serve as a reminder that faith is not always a smooth and unwavering path. Even those who dedicate their lives to serving others, who devote themselves to God, can experience periods of doubt, despair, and spiritual darkness. Mother Teresa's secret is not one of scandal or moral failure, but rather a reflection of the profound complexity of the human experience of faith. As the world continues to grapple with these revelations, questions abound about the true nature of faith and the role of doubt in the spiritual journey. What does it mean to be a saint? Is it possible to be both a beacon of hope and a person who struggles with deep spiritual uncertainty? Can one's faith survive even the darkest of spiritual deserts? For Mother Teresa, the answers to these questions remain elusive, but her letters offer a powerful insight into the reality of faith, one that is not always easy or straightforward. They remind us that even the most devout individuals may face moments of crisis and doubt, and that faith is often a journey that is filled with both light and darkness. In the end, the secret that Mother Teresa carried with her to the grave does not diminish her legacy. If anything, it deepens our understanding of her humanity and the profound complexity of her spiritual journey. Rather than seeing her as an untouchable icon, we can now appreciate the depth of her faith, not because it was without doubt, but because she continued to serve and love others despite her inner turmoil. Her story is a testament to the power of perseverance and the strength of the human spirit, even in the face of doubt. While the world may have viewed her as a perfect example of divine grace, it is perhaps her very struggles with faith that make her story all the more inspiring. Through her example, we are reminded that faith is not about perfection, but about the courage to continue walking the path, even when the way is unclear. If you've made it this far, tell me in the comments what you think about this prophecy. I'll reply to the best comments. As we venture further into the final days of Mother Teresa's life, we begin to uncover a layer of suffering that was not only spiritual but also deeply physical. Those who were closest to her, those who had spent years by her side as she tirelessly cared for the sick, the poor, and the dying, were left in shock by the frailty that overtook her body in the final stages of her life. Despite the weakening of her body, Mother Teresa's mind remained sharply intact, and it was her mind that became a battleground for the spiritual turmoil and painful thoughts that she had kept buried for so many years. There, in the quiet solitude of her dimly lit room in the heart of her order's convent, her trusted companions were witness to an astonishingly vulnerable side of the saint they had known. The woman who had been a beacon of unwavering faith and hope for so many was now confiding in whispers, barely audible but carrying a weight that seemed to hang in the very air of the room. "The world will never know the whole truth," she quietly murmured, a statement so chilling in its significance that it reverberated throughout the hearts of those who were present. What truth was she alluding to? What secret had she carried with her for so long? And more hauntingly, why had she never spoken it aloud before? These questions linger, unanswered, as her final moments approached. The truth Mother Teresa referred to may never be fully understood, but what can be pieced together from the revelations of those who were closest to her in her final years suggests that her suffering, both physical and spiritual, was far more profound than anyone had realized. It is important to recognize that the woman who had dedicated her life to caring for the poorest of the poor, the sick, and the most abandoned, was herself battling with unimaginable pain, both internal and external. Yet, despite the immense physical suffering she endured, there was something even more agonizing for Mother Teresa: the knowledge that the public's perception of her, the carefully cultivated image of the Saint of Calcutta, was only a fraction of the truth. What had she kept hidden? What had she never dared to reveal to the world, and more importantly, to those who had placed their faith in her? Her legacy was founded on her piety, on her divine mission of mercy. Yet in the last years of her life, she appeared to question the very foundation of what she had worked so tirelessly to build. The testimonies of those closest to her reveal unsettling details about the inner workings of the Missionaries of Charity, the organization that Mother Teresa had founded. While millions around the world admired her for the work she had done, some of the individuals who were closest to the daily operations of the homes she had established began to speak out. revealing practices that raise questions about the conditions under which the suffering were cared for. Reports surfaced that highlighted the grim reality behind the closed doors of the charity's homes. There were accounts of the dying being treated with a level of austerity that contradicted the loving care Mother Teresa had publicly professed. Despite the widespread admiration for her work, these testimonies suggested that, within the walls of her charitable institutions, there were widespread concerns about the use of funds, the level of medical care, and the very philosophy that guided her ministry. Were the conditions within her organization as poor as some claimed, and was this the cost of her commitment to serving the poorest of the poor? And what did Mother Teresa herself think about these conditions in her final days? Had she come to regret the harshness of her approach? Or had she truly believed that suffering, even within the walls of her own homes, was an essential part of the path to salvation? There is a compelling argument to be made that Mother Teresa's philosophy about suffering was deeply rooted in her own beliefs about the nature of spirituality. It is possible that she viewed pain and deprivation not as something to be avoided, but as a necessary and redemptive experience. But this raises even deeper questions. Did she, perhaps, embrace suffering to such an extent that it clouded her judgment, leading her to create conditions that some would later view as inhumane? Was her obsession with serving the poorest to the detriment of her own health and the well-being of those around her a sign of dedication? Or did it indicate a dangerous willingness to accept suffering as a path to holiness, even when it was unnecessary? As we reflect on the last moments of Mother Teresa's life, one cannot help but wonder if she had any regrets about the harshness of her methods, or if she remained steadfast in her belief that suffering was an integral part of her divine mission. Did she ever wish she had done things differently? Could she, in her final moments, find peace with the very philosophy that had both defined her life and had led to so much controversy in her final years? The last days of Mother Teresa were not just a period of physical frailty, but also a time when the weight of expectation that had been placed upon her became unbearable. Throughout her life, she had been celebrated as a living saint, revered for her boundless compassion, and admired for her unshakable faith. Yet, behind closed doors, she had admitted to feeling disconnected, lost, and overwhelmed by the burden of being seen as a perfect example of piety. These private writings, discovered only after her death, revealed a woman who, despite her public image, struggled to find her own peace. In her letters, Mother Teresa confessed to feeling as though she were living a lie, trapped by the expectations of others and perhaps even by her own self-imposed image of holiness. Could it be that, in the end, Mother Teresa had become ensnared in the very ideal that the world had created for her? Had she spent her entire life striving to live up to an unattainable standard of saintliness, only to find, in the final days of her life, that the very faith she had clung to was fading into the distance, leaving her isolated and uncertain? In those last moments, it is difficult to say whether Mother Teresa found peace with the contradictions that defined her life. But what is certain is that the world's perception of her, a saint, a living example of selflessness and divine love, was a narrative that, while inspiring, may have been far more complex than anyone could have imagined. While she had served the poor and the sick with unparalleled devotion, and while she had become an icon of compassion, she was also a woman who had carried the weight of her own doubts, struggles, and suffering for much of her life. Her final days, as witnessed by her closest companions, revealed a woman who was no longer able to carry the burden of this image. She had become a symbol not just of divine love, but of the human cost of living a life of such immense service, a cost that many were unaware of until her secrets were uncovered. The final revelations about Mother Teresa's life are not easy to reconcile with the image that had been built around her, but they serve as an important reminder of the complexity of the human spirit. Was she, as the world believed, a perfect model of holiness, untouched by doubt and struggle? Or was she, like the rest of us, a flawed and human being, grappling with the tensions between faith and doubt, compassion and suffering, expectation and reality? The untold story of Mother Teresa, the woman who dedicated her life to others yet carried an immense internal burden, is a reminder that even those who seem the most devoted may face moments of doubt and inner conflict. In the end, it is not just the outward acts of kindness that define a person, but the internal struggles they face in silence. The true legacy of Mother Teresa may not lie in the saintly image the world has of her, but in the honesty and vulnerability she displayed in her final days, a reflection of the deep complexity of the human heart. Now that you know this, I'll leave you with this video where we reveal another shocking secret. Click here before it's too late.